Tonight, before the first church bells cross the River Arno, you are waking in Florence in the year 1500. Above the sleeping rooftops, the enormous dome of Santa Maria del Fiore rises against a sky filled with fading stars. Below it, bakers are lighting their ovens. Goldsmiths are preparing their tools. Artists are grinding pigments. Merchants are waiting for the city gates to open. Florence is about to begin another ordinary day. Inside one of the most creative cities the world has ever known. Stay with me and allow the streets of the Renaissance to slowly come alive around you. The night is still resting over Tuscany. From the hills surrounding Florence, the city appears almost completely dark. Only a few scattered oil lamps glow behind wooden shutters. The River Arno moves quietly through the valley, reflecting the pale light of a thin moon. Its surface is calm. Occasionally, a soft current touches one of the stone bridge supports before continuing downstream. The sound is gentle, steady, unchanged by the sleeping city around it. The air is cool before sunrise. A faint mist has gathered above the river and along the lowest streets. It softens the outlines of buildings, towers, bridges, and garden walls. From this distance, Florence seems less like a crowded city, and more like a collection of shadows beneath the stars. Yet one structure rises clearly above everything else: the great dome of the cathedral. Built without the enormous wooden support structures that many once believed would be necessary, the dome has already watched over Florence for several generations. Its red tiles are dark beneath the night sky. The lantern at its summit appears almost to touch the stars. Beside it stands Giotto's bell tower. Tall, elegant, silent for now. Soon its bells will announce the morning. Their sound will travel across tiled rooftops, narrow streets, workshops, convent gardens, merchant homes, and the fields beyond the city walls. But for a little longer, Florence sleeps. A road descends from the surrounding hills toward one of the city gates. Its surface is uneven. Wagon wheels have pressed deep lines into the earth. Along the roadside, dark cypress trees rise like quiet sentinels. Vineyards cover the gentle slopes beyond them. Rows of grapevines disappear into the darkness. Olive trees twist upward from the pale soil. Their narrow leaves move softly in the night breeze. Several farmers are already awake. They are making their way toward Florence with vegetables, eggs, cheese, firewood, and wine to sell in the morning markets. A small cart moves slowly down the road. Two wooden wheels creak beneath its weight. A mule walks at the front, its breath appearing briefly in the cool air. The farmer holds the reins loosely. He has traveled this road many times. He knows where the stones are uneven, where rainwater collects, where the path narrows beside the hillside. A covered lantern hangs from the cart. Its light reveals baskets filled with onions, leeks, cabbages, and herbs. Several clay jugs have been packed carefully in straw. They contain olive oil and wine produced on farms outside the city. The farmer's wife sits beside the goods, wrapped in a woolen cloak. She checks one of the baskets when the cart passes over a rough stone. Nothing has shifted. The journey continues. They hope to reach the gate before the morning crowd begins to form. Inside Florence, a night watchman walks beneath the walls. He carries a lantern in one hand and a wooden staff in the other. His footsteps echo between tall buildings. The streets are narrow here. Upper floors extend over the road, supported by heavy beams. Some houses seem almost to lean toward one another. Wooden shutters cover the windows. Large doors are secured from within. The watchman pauses near a corner. He raises the lantern. Nothing unusual. Only a cat slipping beneath a cart. A little rainwater resting between the stones. A piece of cloth moving from a balcony above. He continues onward. Fire is one of the dangers he watches for. Florence is built from stone, brick, timber, plaster, and tile. Cooking fires burn inside homes. Candles and oil lamps illuminate rooms. Workshops use furnaces hot enough to melt metal or heat glass. A single careless flame can spread through neighboring buildings before anyone is able to stop it. So the watchman listens. He looks for smoke. He checks doors. He calls the hour into the darkness before moving to the next street. His voice travels beneath an archway, then fades. Closer to the river, the Ponte Vecchio rests in silence. Shops line both sides of the bridge. Their wooden fronts are closed. Small rooms project above the water, supported by beams and stone foundations. During the day, the bridge will be filled with craftsmen, merchants, customers, servants, and travelers crossing between the two sides of Florence. But now, only the river passes beneath it. A lamp burns inside one of the workshops. Behind the shutter, a goldsmith is already awake. His room is small. A heavy wooden table stands near the wall. Files, hammers, tongs, molds, and engraving tools have been arranged carefully across its surface. A tiny furnace waits in the corner. The goldsmith sits beneath the light of an oil lamp, examining a metal clasp left unfinished the previous evening. He holds it close to his face, turns it, studies the pattern. The object is small enough to disappear inside a closed hand. Yet its decoration requires immense patience. A leaf must be engraved along one edge. A line must be corrected near the hinge. The customer expects the piece later today. There is no need to rush, but there is no time to waste. The goldsmith places the clasp on a small block. He selects a narrow tool, then taps it gently with a hammer. One quiet strike. A pause. Another strike. The sound is barely audible from the street. Inside the workshop, it marks the true beginning of the day. If peaceful journeys through history help you relax, leave a quiet like and subscribe to NILOIA. And now, let us enter Renaissance Florence. You leave the bridge and follow the river eastward. The stone embankment is damp beneath the mist. Small boats have been tied near wooden landings. Some carry barrels. Others contain baskets covered with cloth. A fisherman sits inside one of them, repairing a net. His lantern rests beside his knee. He pulls a thin cord through a damaged section, tightens the knot, moves to the next opening. The work is familiar. His fingers continue almost without thought. Several fish lie inside a shallow basket near the stern. They were caught during the night. Before long, they will be carried toward the market. Some will be purchased by wealthy households, others by taverns, monasteries, or ordinary families. The fisherman looks toward the eastern sky. It is still dark, but the color has changed. Black is becoming deep blue. Dawn is approaching. On the opposite bank, a mill wheel stands partly hidden by mist. The current moves it slowly. Wood creaks against stone. Inside the mill, grain is being ground into flour. The miller has worked through part of the night. Florence needs bread every morning. Its population includes merchants, craftsmen, laborers, servants, priests, apprentices, widows, children, travelers, and wealthy families living inside fortified homes. All of them must eat. Sacks of wheat arrive from the surrounding countryside. The grain is cleaned, ground, measured, sold, mixed with water and yeast, then shaped into loaves by hands that often begin working while the rest of the city sleeps. You turn away from the river and enter a lane where several bakeries stand close together. The fragrance reaches you before the light does. Warm grain, wood smoke, yeast, a trace of ash. One bakery has opened its front shutter. Inside, the room glows orange. A large stone oven occupies most of the rear wall. Its fire has been burning long enough for the interior stones to absorb the heat. A baker uses a long wooden tool to move glowing embers toward the side. His assistant prepares loaves upon a flour-covered table. The dough has been divided into simple shapes. Round loaves, longer loaves, smaller portions intended for workers who will purchase breakfast on their way to the workshops. The assistant presses a mark into each piece. The shape identifies the bakery. In a city filled with competition, even bread carries a sign of its maker. An older woman enters through a rear doorway carrying a basket of dry wood. She places it near the oven, then checks a pot suspended above a smaller fire. Inside, grain and water simmer into a thick porridge. The workers will eat before the customers arrive. Their meal is simple: bread, porridge, perhaps cheese, a little watered wine, enough to provide strength for the hours ahead. The baker slides the first group of loaves into the oven. The wooden paddle disappears into the heat. For a moment, the fire illuminates his face. Then the oven door is partly closed. The dough begins to rise. Soon the fragrance will move through every neighboring street. Farther along the lane, a woman opens the shutters of a modest home. Cool morning air enters the room. The house belongs to a family of wool workers. Bundles of raw wool rest inside baskets near the wall. Some have already been cleaned. Others still contain small pieces of straw and dust from the countryside. Florence has grown wealthy through cloth. Wool passes through many hands before it becomes a finished garment. It must be sorted, washed, combed, spun, woven, folded, dyed, cut, sewn, inspected, sold. Each stage requires different knowledge, different tools, different workers. Some tasks are completed inside large workshops, others inside ordinary homes. The woman sits near the open window and lifts a spindle. Her daughter brings a basket closer. Together they begin preparing thread. The spindle turns. Fibers twist. A thin line of yarn grows longer. The work is repetitive, but not careless. Uneven thread can create weak cloths. Weak cloth may fail inspection. A household's income may depend upon the quality of each small movement. The daughter watches her mother's hands. She has been learning for years. No formal lesson is announced. The skill passes through repetition. Watch, try, correct, try again. This is how much of Florence's knowledge survives. Not inside books, but inside bodies trained to perform the same precise movement thousands of times. Across the street, another workshop remains closed. A painted symbol above its door shows a pair of shears. A tailor works there. Next to it, a carved boot identifies a shoemaker. A mortar and pestle mark the shop of an apothecary. Many people cannot read long written signs, but images are easily recognized. A traveler looking for medicine searches for the mortar. Someone needing repairs to a leather sandal looks for the boot. The city speaks through symbols as well as words. You follow the lane toward a small square. At its center stands a public well. The wooden cover is still in place. Several women are already waiting with clay vessels. They speak quietly. One has brought a young child wrapped inside a heavy cloth. The child rests against her shoulder, still half asleep. Another woman lowers a bucket when the well is opened. The rope moves through her hands. The bucket disappears into darkness. A moment later, water can be heard below. The woman pulls. The rope tightens. The full bucket rises slowly. Water is poured into the first vessel. Then the bucket descends again. Carrying water is part of every day. It is needed for drinking, cooking, washing, workshops, animals, cleaning floors, preparing dyes, cooling metal. A wealthy home may employ servants to bring it. An ordinary household must collect it themselves. No one at the well discusses the importance of water. Its importance is too obvious to require explanation. A boy arrives carrying 2 smaller jars. He has been sent by a nearby tavern. He waits impatiently. One of the women tells him to place the jars carefully before he drops them. He obeys for a moment, then begins balancing on 1 foot along the edge of the square. The sleeping child opens its eyes. The women continue talking. The city is not yet fully awake, but community has already gathered around the well. You move onward. The street begins rising toward the cathedral district. With every step, the dome becomes larger. At first, only its upper curve was visible above the rooftops. Now the full structure appears between buildings. Its scale is difficult to understand. The dome seems to rest above the city without effort. Red tiles cover its 8 enormous sections. Pale stone ribs rise between them. At the top, the lantern catches the first weak light of dawn. The cathedral beneath it remains partly in shadow. Its walls are decorated with bands of colored stone. White, green, soft red. Beside it, the bell tower stands like a carefully carved jewel, enlarged to impossible size. Stone panels and narrow windows climb toward the sky. The square is almost empty. A few clergy members cross toward a side entrance. A worker carries a broom. A beggar sleeps beneath an arch, wrapped in a worn cloak. 2 pigeons move between the paving stones. The cathedral is the spiritual center of Florence, but it is also a symbol of civic pride. Its construction involved architects, stonecutters, carpenters, laborers, mathematicians, metalworkers, rope makers, brick makers, and countless others. The Great Dome was not created by a single moment of inspiration. It rose through years of measurement, argument, failed ideas, physical labor, and constant problem-solving. Thousands of bricks rest above the square. Each was placed by human hands. You stand beneath the edge of the building and look upward. The dome disappears into the blue darkness overhead. From this position, it feels almost less like architecture and more like a second sky. A door opens inside the cathedral. Warm lamplight touches the stone threshold. A priest enters with an attendant. The interior remains dark. Rows of columns extend toward the altar. Small flames burn inside side chapels. The building carries the faint scent of wax, incense, cool stone, and old wood. Before the city begins its business, prayers will be spoken here. Some people will ask for protection, others forgiveness. Some will pray for healthy children, safe journeys, profitable trade, or the return of someone traveling far from home. A merchant may kneel beside a laborer, a widow beside a guild official. Their places in Florence are unequal. Their hopes may sound surprisingly similar. You remain outside as the first bell begins to move inside Giotto's tower. At first, there is only the sound of mechanism, wood shifting, rope tightening. Then the bell strikes. A deep note rolls across the square. It passes between the buildings, over the rooftops, across the Arno, toward the city gates and the hills beyond. The note slowly fades. Then another follows. Florence responds. Shutters open. Doors swing outward. Dogs begin barking. Carts start moving through the gates. Workshop apprentices appear carrying tools and bundles. The line at the well grows longer. Another bakery opens. A horse is led from a stable. Servants sweep dust from the entrances of wealthy homes. The darkness of the streets gives way to grey-blue morning light. On the road outside the walls, the farmers hear the bell. Their cart is now close to the gate. Several other wagons have joined them. One carries barrels of wine, another firewood, another cages containing chickens. The guards begin inspecting the arriving goods. Fees may be collected, questions asked, weights checked. Then each cart enters the city. Florence is hungry. It depends upon the countryside beyond its walls. No matter how wealthy its merchants become, no matter how magnificent its churches and palaces appear, the city cannot eat gold, silk, paintings, or marble. It needs grain, vegetables, animals, gold, oil, wine, firewood. Every morning, the gates remind Florence of this dependence. Inside the square, a young apprentice hurries toward his master's workshop. He is carrying a loaf wrapped in cloth. The bread is still warm. He takes one small piece while walking, then another. His master expects him before sunrise. The bell has already sounded. He increases his pace. Nearby, an older artist opens the door of a studio. The interior smells of wood, glue, oil, plaster, and powdered minerals. Several panels lean against the wall. One has been prepared with a smooth white surface. Another contains the early outline of a religious scene. Figures have been drawn lightly. Their faces are unfinished. Their robes exist only as lines. Small containers sit upon a shelf. Red pigment, yellow earth, green made from minerals, deep blue rare and costly. The artist's assistant enters carrying water. Another apprentice begins grinding pigment upon a flat stone. The tool moves in slow circles. Color must be prepared carefully. Particles that remain too large may create a rough surface. Pigment that is poorly mixed may fade or separate. The brilliant paintings associated with Renaissance Florence begin with quiet physical tasks. Grinding, measuring, mixing, sanding, applying layer after layer. The artist examines the light entering through the window. Morning light changes quickly. He adjusts the position of the panel. Today, he hopes to begin one of the faces. The person who commissioned the work may expect beauty. The artist sees problems. The angle of a hand, the fall of fabric, the direction of a gaze, the relationship between light and skin. Art is not only inspiration, it is attention. Across the city, similar workshops are opening. Sculptors uncover blocks of marble. Wood carvers sharpen tools. Bookbinders arrange thread and leather. Printers prepare letters of metal for pages that can be reproduced far more quickly than handwritten manuscripts. Goldsmiths light furnaces. Dyers check vats. Weavers sit before looms. Apothecaries uncover jars filled with herbs, oils, powders, and resins. Florence becomes famous through finished objects. But the morning begins with preparation. Before beauty, someone sweeps the floor. Before a statue, someone sharpens a chisel. Before a book, someone mixes ink. Before a silk garment, someone untangles thread. The sunlight finally reaches the highest section of the dome. Red tiles glow above the city. The light moves slowly downward, across the bell tower, over the cathedral walls, onto the square. People turn their faces toward the warmth. The mist above the Arno begins to thin. Mori bells answer from smaller churches. Each has a different tone. Together, they create a sound that belongs to Florence. Deep notes, higher notes, near, distant, overlapping above the rooftops. You leave the cathedral square and follow the growing flow of people into the streets. A merchant passes with two assistants carrying rolls of cloth. A monk walks toward a convent. A servant holds a basket of bread. A mason carries tools over one shoulder. A young student protects several pages beneath his cloak. A nobleman rides slowly on horseback, followed by an attendant. A child chases pigeons until his mother calls him back. The city is no longer sleeping. It is becoming a workshop, a market, a school, a church, a home, a place of ambition, faith, competition, beauty, inequality, and endless labor. The history of Florence will remember famous names: painters, sculptors, architects, writers, merchants, rulers. But the city itself is built by thousands of people whose names will never be carved into stone. The woman spinning wool near her window. The baker placing loaves into the oven. The farmer guiding his cart through the gate. The apprentice grinding pigment. The watchman walking the streets before dawn. Every one of them contributes to the world now awakening around you. Ahead, the road leads toward the workshops controlled by Florence's powerful guilds. There, wool becomes wealth. Metal becomes art. Pigment becomes memory. And ordinary hands begin creating objects that may survive long after the people who made them are gone. The bells continue above the city. The first customers enter the shops. The morning markets fill with color. And beneath the great dome, another day of the Renaissance begins, the WRKSHOPS of Florence. The bells continue above the city. Their final notes drift across the rooftops before dissolving into the growing sounds of morning. Florence is awake now. Wooden shutters stand open. Carts move slowly through the streets. Apprentices hurry between workshops carrying bread, tools, charcoal, bundles of cloth, and jars of oil. The air has changed. The cool silence before dawn has given way to a steady rhythm of work. You leave the cathedral square and enter a narrower street where the buildings stand close together. Sunlight reaches only the upper floors. Below, the road remains shaded. The stone pavement is uneven beneath your feet. A shallow channel runs along one side, carrying dirty water away from kitchens and workshops. Above you, wooden beams support balconies, drying cloth, cages for birds, and pots filled with herbs. A woman leans from an upper window and shakes dust from a small rug. Farther down the street, a shopkeeper sweeps the entrance to his business. Dust rises briefly in the golden light, then settles again. This part of Florence belongs to the craftsmen. Every few steps, another sound escapes from an open doorway. The dull rhythm of a loom, the sharp strike of a hammer, the scrape of a file against metal, the steady circular movement of a grinding stone, the voices of masters correcting apprentices. Workshops do not hide what they produce. Their signs, smells, noises, and discarded materials reveal their purpose to anyone passing outside. The first shop you approach belongs to a wool merchant. Large bundles rest beneath the awning. Some contain raw fleece brought from the countryside. Others hold cloth that has already passed through many stages of preparation. Florentine wool is not simply gathered, woven, and sold. It travels through a long chain of specialists. Merchants purchase raw wool from distant regions. Workers clean it. Combers separate the fibers. Spinners create thread. Weavers turn thread into cloth. Fullers wash and strengthen it. Dyers give it color. Inspectors examine the finished material. Only then can it be sold under the reputation of Florence. A merchant stands beside several rolls of dark cloth. He runs one hand across the surface while speaking to a customer. The customer pinches the fabric between his fingers, holds it toward the light, checks the weave. Good cloth should feel even, strong, dense enough to survive years of wear. The merchant explains where the wool came from, how it was treated, which dye was used. The customer listens politely, but trusts his own hand more than the merchant's words. He finds a small irregularity near the edge. The merchant looks. The flaw is minor. Still, the price changes. Trade in Florence depends upon reputation, but every transaction contains negotiation. Behind the merchant's shop, several workers sort raw wool. The room is filled with pale bundles. Dust hangs in the air. One worker spreads fleece across a wooden table. He removes thorns, dirt, and pieces of dried grass. Another separates the finer fibers from the coarse ones. Their hands move quickly. They have learned to judge wool by touch. Softness, length, strength, oil, color. A person unfamiliar with the work might see only a pile of fleece. The workers see quality, origin, possibility. They know which fibers may become expensive cloth, and which are better suited to ordinary garments. A young apprentice carries a basket toward the doorway. He sneezes. One of the older workers laughs. The dust is part of the trade. The apprentice has been here only a few months. By the end of the year, perhaps he will no longer notice it. You continue down the street. A cart loaded with woven cloth blocks part of the road. Two men guide it carefully between the buildings. The rolls have been wrapped against rain and dirt. Each one represents weeks or months of labor. The cart is heading toward a fulling workshop. Their cloth will be cleaned, softened, and thickened. The process is demanding. The fabric must be washed repeatedly in large vats. Workers tread upon it with their feet or handle it with tools. Water, heat, and cleansing mixtures remove grease left from the wool. The fibers tighten. The cloth becomes stronger. As you approach the fulling workshop, the smell arrives first. Wet wool, wood smoke, soap-like mixtures, damp stone. Large vessels stand near the rear wall. Steam rises from one of them. Several workers lift a heavy length of cloth from the water. It darkens beneath the moisture. They pull together. The fabric resists. Water runs across the floor and into a narrow drain. An older fuller checks the cloth. He examines its surface. The process must continue. Too little work, and the material remains weak. Too much, and it may shrink or become uneven. The workers lower it again. Their movements follow a rhythm developed through repetition. Lift, turn, press, release. The workshop is warm and damp. No painting will preserve the names of these men. No statue will celebrate the hours they spend with wet fabric. Yet the wealthy merchants of Florence depend upon them. Without their labor, Florentine cloth would lose the quality that makes it valuable across Europe. The city's beauty is supported by work that is often uncomfortable, tiring, and largely unseen. Outside, the air feels fresh again. You follow the road toward the dyer's district. Here, the buildings announce themselves through color. Lengths of cloth hang from upper rails. Deep red, muted green, warm yellow, blue-gray, rich black. The shades move gently in the morning breeze. Sunlight changes them as they sway. One moment bright, the next in shadow. Dyeing is part craft, part chemistry, part carefully guarded knowledge. Different colors require different materials. Plants, minerals, tree bark, roots, insects, imported substances arriving through long trade routes. Some colors are inexpensive. Others cost more than the cloth itself. A master dyer stands beside a large vat. The liquid inside appears almost black. An assistant stirs it using a wooden pole. The master watches closely. He does not rely only upon written instructions. He studies the smell, the temperature, the way the surface moves, the color of a small test thread lifted into the light. The cloth will appear different when wet, different again after drying. Experience tells him what the eye cannot yet see. A customer has requested a particular shade of crimson. Not too dark, not too bright. The color must match another piece already owned by the household. The dyer lifts the test thread, turns it, waits, then asks for more material to be added to the vat. The assistant obeys. The work continues. Nearby, a boy grinds dried plant matter inside a heavy mortar. He works with both hands. The tool rises, falls, rises again. Powder gathers along the bottom. The boy is perhaps 12 years old. His family may have placed him with the dyer as an apprentice. He receives food, training, and a place within the household. In return, he works, learns, obeys. His apprenticeship may last for years. At first, he performs simple tasks: sweeping, carrying water, grinding materials, watching the fire. Only slowly will he be trusted with the knowledge that defines the trade. A master does not reveal everything at once. Skill must be earned through patience. Mistakes in a dyeing workshop are expensive. One poorly prepared vat can ruin an entire length of cloth. You move past hanging fabrics into a brighter street. Here, the smell of wool and dye is replaced by heated metal. A line of small workshops belongs to metalworkers, locksmiths, toolmakers, and goldsmiths. The first workshop produces ordinary iron objects: hinges, nails, hooks, knives, chains, agricultural tools. The forge glows near the rear wall. A blacksmith removes a narrow bar of iron using long tongs. The metal is orange, almost yellow near the tip. He places it on the anvil. The hammer falls. A bright sound fills the room. Once, twice, again. Sparks scatter toward the floor. The apprentice turns the metal. The master strikes. The sound travels into the street. People nearby barely react. It belongs to the neighborhood as naturally as bells and cart wheels. The iron changes shape with every strike. A flat section appears, then a curve. The blacksmith returns it to the fire. The metal darkens. He waits until it glows again. The finished object will be a hinge for a heavy door. It may remain in use for decades, perhaps longer. Visitors will notice the carved stone above the doorway, the painted walls, the family crest. Almost no one will notice the hinge, but without it, the door cannot move. The city depends upon countless objects too ordinary to receive admiration. A few doors away, the atmosphere changes completely. This workshop belongs to a goldsmith. The room is quieter, cleaner, better lit. Small tools rest in organized rows. Files, fine hammers, tweezers, draw plates for producing narrow wire, stone surfaces for polishing, tiny balances for weighing precious metal. A master sits near the window examining a ring. The band has already been formed. Now he is preparing a setting for a small gemstone. The stone lies inside a cloth-lined box. It catches the morning light. Blue, deep and clear. The goldsmith touches it only with care. A mistake could damage something worth more than an ordinary worker earns in many months. His apprentice holds a lamp to improve the light. The master turns the ring, adjusts the setting, tests the stone without securing it, removes it again. The process is slow. No movement is wasted. Goldsmiths occupy a special place within Florence. They create objects of wealth and ceremony. Rings, clasps, chalices, reliquaries, decorative chains. But their workshops also teach skills useful to sculptors and artists. Precise drawing, casting, engraving, metalwork, careful observation. Some of Florence's most famous artists begin their training in places like this. A small object teaches the hand to respect proportion. The goldsmith finally places the stone into the setting. He bends the surrounding metal inward, a little from one side, then the opposite side. The stone becomes secure. He holds the ring toward the light. The apprentice smiles. The master does not. Not yet. He notices a rough edge. The file returns to his hand. Beauty must survive inspection. Across the lane stands another workshop filled with wooden panels, plaster, pigments, and unfinished frames. A painter works beside an open window. The panel before him shows the outline of a seated figure. The face has been drawn with thin lines. One hand rests upon a book. The other is raised slightly. The composition is religious, commissioned for a chapel belonging to a guild. The painter has prepared the wooden support over many days. The boards were selected, joined, covered with cloths, coated with layers of gesso made from animal glue and fine plaster, sanded until smooth. Only then could drawing begin. The image that viewers will eventually see depends upon many hidden layers. An apprentice sits at a smaller table preparing egg tempera. He separates the yolk from the white, mixes a small amount with pigment, tests the consistency. Another apprentice grinds blue mineral upon a stone slab. The color is precious. The master watches carefully. Too much wasted material will be deducted from someone's patience, if not their pay. Near the wall, sheets of drawing paper have been pinned beneath wooden weights. Studies of hands, eyes, folded fabric, profiles, feet, architectural details. The artist does not invent every form while standing before the final panel. He studies parts separately, repeats them, corrects them. A hand that appears effortless in a finished painting may have required dozens of drawings. The master approaches the panel. He examines the figure's face. Today he begins the first thin layer of skin tone. The brush touches the surface gently. The color is pale, almost transparent. More layers will follow. Light, shadow, warmth, detail. The face will emerge slowly. Painting is not a single act of creation. It is a long negotiation between intention, material, drying time, light, and human error. Outside the workshop, a customer waits. He represents the guild that commissioned the image. He carries a folded agreement. The painting must include certain figures, certain colors, certain symbols. The most expensive blue may be reserved for a sacred robe. Gold leaf may be required around the halos. The deadline is connected to a religious festival. The patron has ideas. The artist has others. Their conversation remains polite, but neither completely yields. Art in Florence belongs to faith, wealth, reputation, politics, and personal ambition at the same time. The painter promises progress. The patron promises another payment when the next stage is approved. They part with careful smiles. You continue toward the sculptor's workshops. The sound changes again. Metal striking stone. Jord. Controlled. A sculptor stands beside a block of marble. At first glance, the stone appears untouched, but faint lines have been drawn across the surface. Measurements. Reference points. The planned form exists only as marks and imagination. A young assistant wets the floor to keep dust from rising too heavily. Another sharpens chisels. The sculptor selects a broad tool. He places it against the marble, raises the hammer, strikes. A small piece breaks away. Then another. The early stage is rough. Large sections must be removed before details can appear. The sculptor walks around the block repeatedly. He does not work only from one side. A statue must exist in space. A shoulder seen from the front changes when viewed from behind. One incorrect cut can destroy weeks of planning. Unlike paint, marble cannot easily be added back. The sculptor strikes again. Dust falls across his sleeves. The form hidden inside the block is still invisible to you. To him, perhaps it is already there. A wooden model rests nearby. The full statue will be larger. The model helps with proportion, but stone has its own demands. A natural line inside the marble. A hidden crack. A section more fragile than expected. The material participates in the final result. Artists may speak of controlling stone. In practice, they listen to it. Across the courtyard, stonecutters prepare architectural pieces. Columns, window frames, decorative borders, steps. Not every block becomes a statue. Most become parts of buildings. The cutters follow templates. Their work must fit precisely with pieces shaped by other hands. A beautiful palace depends upon measurements repeated accurately. One stone too large delays the wall. One angle incorrect creates a gap. The workers mark each finished piece before it is carried away. The mark identifies the workshop. It may also help determine payment. Nearby, a cart waits to transport stone toward a building site. The driver checks the ropes. Marble is heavy. The streets are narrow. A broken wheel could block an entire neighborhood. The workers tighten every knot before the journey begins. You leave the sculptors and enter a street lined with bookshops, stationers, scribes, and printers. The smell of ink replaces stone dust. The printed book is still relatively new in Florence. For centuries, manuscripts have been copied by hand. Now movable metal type allows pages to be reproduced with far greater speed. The process does not make books effortless or cheap. Paper, ink, labor, presses, and skilled workers remain necessary. But the number of identical copies that can be produced has changed the movement of words. Inside one printing workshop, small metal letters have been arranged into lines. Each piece must be selected individually, placed backward, spaced carefully, locked into a rectangular frame. A compositor stands before drawers divided into compartments. His fingers move quickly. He knows where each letter is stored. He reads the manuscript beside him, selects the characters, builds the line. The text will appear correctly only after printing reverses the arrangement. A mistake may be difficult to notice until the page is produced. At the press, another worker applies ink to the raised letters. A sheet of paper is placed carefully. The frame moves beneath the heavy screw. The worker pulls the wooden handle. Pressure increases. Wood creaks. The paper receives the ink. The press is released. The sheet is lifted. Fresh black letters cover the page. The printer examines it. One section is faint. More even pressure is needed. The workers adjust the press. Another page is prepared. Printed books can spread sermons, poems, classical texts, practical manuals, political ideas, and religious arguments. The same technology that preserves knowledge can also spread mistakes more quickly. Printers must decide what to produce, which texts will sell, which authorities may object, which works deserve the cost of paper. A book begins as an intellectual object, but it must also survive as a business. At a nearby table, a corrector compares the printed page with the manuscript. He follows each line using one finger. A missing word is marked. A reversed letter. A line spaced too closely. The page will be corrected before too many copies are made. Even machines depend upon patient eyes. In the front of the shop, several finished books are displayed. Some remain as loose printed sheets waiting to be bound. Others have simple leather covers. A wealthy customer examines a volume of classical history. A student looks at a smaller book of grammar. The student asks the price. His expression changes. He cannot afford it. The bookseller offers an older, used copy. Several pages contain notes from the previous owner. The student opens it, reads one annotation, smiles. A book can carry more than the printed words. It can preserve the thoughts of every reader who came before. He purchases the used copy. The bookseller wraps it in cloth. The student leaves holding it closely against his chest. You continue toward an apothecary. The painted symbol above the door shows a mortar and pestle. Inside, shelves cover the walls from floor to ceiling. Ceramic jars stand in neat rows. Each one bears a painted label. Dried herbs hang from the beams. The air is rich with overlapping scents. Rosemary, sage, lavender, vinegar, honey, myrrh, cinnamon, dried citrus peel. Some ingredients are used as medicines, others for food, perfume, dye, or household care. The boundaries between pharmacy, spice shop, and scientific cabinet are not always clear. The apothecary stands behind a counter, mixing a powder. He measures ingredients using a small balance. A woman waits beside him, holding the hand of a child. The child has been coughing. The apothecary asks questions. How long? Is there fever? Does the cough worsen at night? What has the child eaten? He listens carefully. His understanding of illness is limited by the knowledge of the time. Some remedies may soothe. Others may do little. A few may cause harm. Yet careful observation remains valuable. He prepares a syrup using honey and herbs. The woman receives instructions. A small amount, several times through the day. Keep the child warm. Return if the fever rises. The apothecary cannot promise recovery. He offers what experience has taught him. A second customer waits with a list from a painter's workshop. The apothecary also sells pigments, minerals, resins, oils, materials needed to create color. Artists and physicians sometimes purchase from the same shelves. A substance used in a medicine may also appear in varnish or paint. The apothecary opens a jar containing bright yellow powder. He weighs a small amount, wraps it carefully, warns the customer not to waste it. At the rear of the shop, an assistant records sales inside a ledger. Names, quantities, prices, debts. Many customers do not pay immediately. Credit binds households and businesses together. A painter owes the apothecary. The apothecary owes a spice merchant. The spice merchant owes a shipping agent. Money moves, but promises move just as often. Florence is wealthy partly because its merchants have learned how to measure trust. You leave the apothecary and enter a wider street. Here, several guild halls rise above the workshops. The guilds are among the most powerful institutions in Florence. They regulate trades, set standards, train apprentices, inspect products, protect members, support religious chapels, participate in politics. A craftsman does not work entirely alone. His trade connects him to rules older and larger than his workshop. Some guilds represent wealthy merchants and bankers. Others include skilled artisans. Still others serve trades with less influence. The differences matter. Not every worker possesses the same voice. Not every trade carries the same honor. A successful master may participate in civic life. An ordinary laborer may have little control over the decisions shaping his work. Florence celebrates skill, but it remains a city of hierarchy. Outside one guild building, inspectors examine a length of finished cloth. The fabric is stretched across a table. One inspector checks the width. Another studies the weave. A third searches for uneven dye. The merchant watches. His expression is calm, but his hands reveal tension. If the cloth fails inspection, it may not be sold under the guild's name. The city's reputation depends upon consistency. Florence does not merely sell products. It sells trust in the quality of those products. The inspector finds a narrow section where the weave is slightly loose. He points. The merchant explains. The inspector listens. A decision is made. The cloth may be sold, but at a lower grade. The merchant is disappointed. Still, the mark is applied. The system protects buyers and protects the larger reputation of the city. It can also favor established masters over newcomers. Rules create order. They also create barriers. Across the street, a young craftsman speaks with a guild official. He hopes to open his own workshop. To do so, he must prove his training. Pay fees. Present acceptable work. Demonstrate that he understands the trade. Perhaps secure support from people already respected within the guild. Skill alone may not be enough. Family connections, money, reputation, luck, all play a role. The young man holds a small carved object wrapped in cloth. His masterwork. The official examines it, turns it in his hands, asks several questions. The young craftsman waits. The street continues around them. Carts pass. Workers call to one another. A church bell sounds the hour. For the young man, however, the entire city has narrowed to the official's expression. At last, the official nods. More steps remain, but the first judgment is favorable. The young man bows. When he turns away, his face changes. Relief, pride, fear of what comes next. Opening a workshop offers independence and risk. Rent, materials, customers, debts, apprentices, competition. A master is free to succeed and free to fail. You follow the street toward the sound of rushing water. A canal carries power towards several workshops. Water wheels turn machinery used in parts of the cloth trade. The city depends not only upon human muscles, but upon controlled water. Wooden wheels rotate steadily. Gears transfer movement. Heavy hammers rise and fall. The sound is deep and repetitive. Nearby buildings tremble slightly with each impact. An engineer inspects one of the mechanisms. He listens for irregular sounds. A wheel that turns poorly wastes power. A cracked gear can stop production. Machines do not remove labor. They change it. Someone must build them, maintain them, feed materials into them, repair them when they fail. The engineer places one hand against a wooden support. He feels the vibration, then signals for the mechanism to slow. A worn joint needs attention. Workers bring tools. Production pauses. No one complains. A breakdown later would cost far more. You stand beside the canal for a moment. Water rushes beneath the wheel. The same river system that carries goods and supplies households also turns machines. Florence's wealth is connected to movement. Water, wool, coins, letters, people, ideas. Nothing remains still for long. The morning has now passed into midday. Sunlight reaches deeper between the buildings. The workshops are warmer. Workers pause for food. Apprentices collect bread, onions, cheese, and simple bowls of soup from nearby cellars. A blacksmith sits on an overturned bucket. A fuller rests beside an open door. A painter's assistant eats while still holding a pigment-stained cloth. Conversation rises. Complaints about customers. Jokes about masters. News from the market. Rumors about politics. The price of grain. A festival approaching next week. The same city that produces masterpieces also spends much of its time discussing ordinary problems. You sit beneath the shade of an awning. A vendor serves a bowl of thick vegetable soup. Beans, cabbage, onions, herbs. A piece of yesterday's bread rests at the bottom, softening in the hot liquid. The meal is simple, warm, filling. Around you, workers eat quickly. The pause will not last long. Church bells mark the hour. An apprentice stands. His master has called. Another finishes the last of his bread. A dyer returns toward the vats. The rhythm begins again. Hammer, loom, press, chisel, grinding stone. Florence returns to work. You rise and continue toward the civic center of the city. Ahead, the streets open gradually into a larger square. The tall, fortified shape of the Palazzo della Signoria rises above surrounding buildings. Its tower watches over Florence like a stone guardian. Near it stand public statues, government offices, gathering places, and streets leading toward the city's financial heart. The workshops have shown you how Florence creates its wealth and beauty. But the objects made here do not exist outside power. Guilds influence government. Bankers lend to princes. Families compete for offices. Artists depend upon patrons. Merchants fund chapels and palaces. The same hands that create color, cloth, books, and metal also support a complicated political world. As you approach the square, the sound of the workshops begins to fade behind you. In its place come other voices. Officials reading announcements. Messengers arriving on horseback. Bankers discussing exchange. Citizens gathering beneath the palace walls. Florence is not only a city of art. It is a city of ambition. And beyond the next corner, its public heart is waiting. The sounds of the workshops begin to fade behind you. The steady hammer of the blacksmith becomes distant. The heavy rhythm of the printing press disappears beneath the wider noise of the city. Ahead, the street opens gradually. Tall buildings pull away from one another. Sunlight spreads across a broad public square. You have reached the civic heart of Florence, the Piazza della Signoria. For generations, this square has carried the political voice of the city. Public announcements are read here. Officials enter and leave the palace. Guild representatives gather beneath shaded arcades. Messengers arrive from distant towns. Citizens discuss taxes, war, trade, elections, and the actions of powerful families. At certain moments, the square fills with ceremony. At others, it becomes a place of anger, celebration, punishment, or prayer. But on this calm morning, in the year 1500, it is simply busy. The Palazzo della Signoria rises above the square. Its walls are heavy and fortified. The stone surface is rough. Small windows appear high above the ground. A tall tower climbs from one side of the building, visible from nearly every district of Florence. The palace does not resemble the graceful villas of the countryside. It is designed to look strong, permanent, difficult to challenge. The city government meets inside. Yet Florence itself has rarely known political permanence. Families rise, families fall, alliances shift, governments change. Officials who appear powerful today may be forgotten within a generation. The palace remains, while the people inside it come and go. You approach slowly. Several guards stand near the main entrance. Their clothing carries the colors and symbols of the Republic. One rests a long weapon against his shoulder. Another checks the documents of a messenger who has just arrived on horseback. The horse is tired. Its chest rises and falls quickly. Dust covers its legs. The messenger carries a leather pouch protected beneath his cloak. Inside may be a letter from another Italian city. News from Rome. A report from a military commander. A contract. A warning. A request for money. Written information travels slowly, but decisions often depend upon it. The messenger dismounts. A stable servant takes the reins. The document disappears through the palace doors. Outside, the square continues exactly as before. A fruit seller calls to passing customers. Children chase one another around a fountain. A notary opens a wooden case. Two pigeons search between the paving stones. The contents of the letter may eventually change the direction of the city. For now, only a few people know it has arrived. Near the palace entrance, a group of citizens waits beneath the shade. Some carry petitions. Others have come to speak with officials. A cloth merchant holds a folded document sealed with red wax. Beside him stands a widow dressed in dark wool. She carries no expensive papers, only a small wooden box containing several older records. Perhaps she is trying to settle a dispute over property. Perhaps a debt remains unpaid. Perhaps a relative died without leaving clear instructions. Law reaches into ordinary homes through inheritance, contracts, apprenticeships, marriage agreements, and unpaid promises. The widow watches the palace doors. She has been waiting for some time. No one tells her how long the delay will be. A younger man offers her a place on a stone bench. She nods. They wait together. Public government may belong to the city, but access to it is not equally simple for everyone. Those with wealth, family connections, and guild influence often find doors opening more quickly. Others depend upon patience, a helpful notary, a sympathetic official, or simple persistence. You move toward the center of the square. A wooden platform has been erected near one side. A city official climbs the steps carrying a rolled announcement. A small group gathers. The official opens the document. He begins to read aloud. Many people in Florence can read basic signs, numbers, and familiar words. Some are highly educated. Others cannot read at all. Public announcements must therefore be spoken. The official's voice travels across the square. The message concerns the movement of goods through one of the city gates. A road outside Florence has been damaged by rain. Heavy carts must use another route until repairs are completed. The information sounds ordinary, yet merchants listen carefully. A delayed cart can mean spoiled food, missed customers, higher transport costs, a broken promise to another business. One merchant turns immediately toward his assistant. Instructions are given. A different gate, a different road. A message must be sent to the drivers before they arrive. The assistant leaves at once. A city is shaped not only by great laws, but by thousands of practical notices that prevent daily life from becoming confusion. The official continues. A second announcement concerns the inspection of weights and measures. Merchants must present their scales. The city attempts to control fraud. A seller who uses false weights may earn more from each transaction. But trust in the market would slowly disappear. So official measures are kept. Scales are examined. Fines are issued. The system is imperfect. Corruption still exists. Yet the idea remains important. A pound of wool should mean the same thing in one shop as in another. A coin should possess an agreed value. A contract should contain clear obligations. Florence depends upon shared standards. Without them, trade becomes argument. The official finishes reading. The crowd disperses. Several merchants continue discussing the announcement. Others have already forgotten it. The wooden platform remains empty beneath the sun. Across the square stands an open loggia with broad arches. Its deep shade offers relief from the growing warmth. People gather there to speak privately, wait for appointments, or simply watch the movement of the piazza. Stone statues and civic symbols remind visitors that Florence understands power through images as well as words. A lion appears upon shields, banners, carvings, and public monuments. The animal represents courage and the independence of the city. Its image is familiar even to those who cannot read the laws written nearby. Florence uses art everywhere. Inside churches, on guild buildings, across palaces, upon coins. Even government becomes visual. A sculpted figure can express victory, justice, strength, faith, a warning to enemies, or the values the city wishes to believe about itself. A father stands beneath the loggia with his young son. He points toward one of the figures. The child listens. Perhaps the father is explaining the story represented by the sculpture. Perhaps he is explaining what the city wants the story to mean. Public art teaches people how to remember. The lesson may not always be neutral, but it is powerful. You sit briefly beneath one of the arches. From here, the entire square is visible. Officials enter the palace. Shopkeepers arrange goods. Servants cross, carrying baskets. A priest speaks with a merchant. A soldier drinks from a cup. Several young men gather around a notice fixed to a wall. The paper contains names. Perhaps appointments to office. Perhaps a legal order. Perhaps a list of taxes. They read silently. One points to a line. Another shakes his head. Florentine politics is rarely quiet for long. Only a few years have passed since the city experienced intense religious and political upheaval. The powerful Medici family has been driven from Florence. A preacher once filled this square with warnings about luxury, corruption, and divine punishment. Crowds listened. Governments changed. Objects associated with vanity were publicly destroyed. Then the preacher himself fell from power. His final days ended here. The memory is still recent. Some people speak of him with admiration, others with bitterness. Many prefer not to speak at all. The square remembers even when the stones remain silent. In the year 1500, Florence is still a republic, at least in name. Its government is built from councils, magistrates, elections, guild influence, and carefully limited terms of office. The system is designed to prevent one person from controlling the city permanently. Yet wealth has its own form of power. A family that lends money to officials, funds public buildings, supports religious institutions, employs hundreds of workers, and maintains relationships across Europe. does not need a crown to shape decisions. Florence is a republic surrounded by powerful individuals. The tension between public freedom and private influence follows the city everywhere. A bell sounds from the palace tower. The note is sharper than the cathedral bells. People in the square look upward. The sound marks official time. Meetings begin. Doors close. Clerks carry documents from one room to another. Inside the palace, elected officials sit upon wooden benches. The chambers are not comfortable. Government is meant to appear serious. Some rooms are decorated with painted symbols of virtue. Justice, prudence, courage, temperance, values that every government praises, even when those governing struggle to practice them. A clerk opens a large ledger. Names and payments cover the page. The city must collect money. Roads need repair. Walls require maintenance. Soldiers must be paid. Foreign ambassadors expect gifts and hospitality. Public ceremonies require decoration. Officials need scribes. Government turns ideals into accounts. Every speech eventually reaches a table where someone calculates the cost. You leave the palace behind and follow a narrow street toward Florence's financial district. The change is gradual. Government buildings give way to merchant houses. The sound of public announcements is replaced by quieter conversations. Heavy doors stand beneath family emblems carved into stone. Windows are narrow on the lower floors. The upper levels appear more elegant. These buildings are homes, but also places of business. A wealthy merchant may live above rooms where clerks calculate exchanges involving cities hundreds of miles away. Florence has built much of its influence through banking. Money moves through the city in forms both visible and invisible. Coins pass from hand to hand in the market, but larger transactions may exist only as writing inside ledgers. A merchant in Florence can pay someone in Bruges without sending a chest of coins across dangerous roads. A banker records a promise. A partner in another city completes the payment. Later, the accounts are balanced through trade, credit, and further obligations. Trust travels where metal cannot. You enter the outer room of a banking house. The space is quieter than the workshops. Several clerks sit behind long wooden tables. Ledgers lie open before them. The pages are filled with narrow columns. Names, dates, currencies, amounts owed, amounts received, interest disguised within exchange rates, partnership shares, shipping costs, insurance agreements. A modern visitor might see only numbers. The clerks see movement. A shipment of wool leaving England. Silk arriving from the east. A payment owed by a prince. A merchant family opening a branch in another city. A ship delayed by weather. A debt that may never be recovered. Every line carries a story of risk. One clerk works with small counters placed across a marked board. He moves them carefully, adds one group, removes another, then writes the result into the ledger. Another clerk reads a letter delivered from Venice. The handwriting is hurried. A ship carrying valuable cargo has not arrived on schedule. There may be no disaster. Winds can delay vessels. Harbors can close. Captains change routes. Yet uncertainty has a price. The banker standing behind the clerk asks several questions. Was the cargo insured? Which partners share the loss? When was the vessel last reported? A response must be prepared. No one raises his voice. Panic does not improve an account. The banker has learned to treat bad news as something to be measured. Across the room, a young apprentice sharpens a quill. He is still learning. At first, his duties are simple: preparing ink, carrying messages, copying addresses, adding small figures under supervision. But a banking apprentice must eventually understand several currencies, different systems of weight, interest, exchange, foreign customs, legal agreements, and the personalities of people who rarely reveal everything they intend. Money is numerical. Banking remains deeply human. The apprentice places the sharpened quill beside his master. A blot of ink stains one finger. He wipes it against a cloth. The master points toward a column. One figure has been copied incorrectly. The apprentice looks again. A single number is wrong. The amount is small. The lesson is not. Large failures often begin as tiny marks no one checked. The figure is corrected. The calculation begins again. On a table near the wall rests a small balance. Gold coins are weighed. The Florentine florin is recognized across Europe. It carries the symbol of the city's flower on one side and a religious figure on the other. Its reputation depends upon reliable gold content. A coin may travel farther than the person who minted it. It may pass through markets, courts, ports, and military camps. People who have never seen Florence may still trust its money. A customer places several florins upon the table. The banker examines them. One coin appears worn. Another may have been clipped along the edge. A small piece of gold removed from many coins can become valuable. The banker weighs each one. The customer watches. A coin's stamped value is not always enough. Metal tells its own truth. The worn coin is accepted at a reduced value. The customer protests. The banker remains calm. He points toward the scale. The balance does not argue. After several moments, the customer agrees. Business continues. You move deeper into the building. A more private chamber contains several merchants discussing a large transaction. A map rests upon the table. The Mediterranean has been drawn with careful coastlines. Ports are marked. So are routes across land. One merchant points toward a city in France, another toward a northern trading center. They are planning the movement of Florentine cloths. The finished fabric will leave the city by cart, cross mountains, pass through customs points, enter regions where different coins, languages, and laws apply. At every stage, someone may demand payment. A bridge toll, a city fee, a storage charge, protection, transportation. Risk accumulates with distance. So does profit. A merchant cannot control every road. He depends upon letters, agents, partners, and reputation. The men discuss timing. Winter mountain routes can become dangerous. Spring roads may turn to mud. Political conflict can close borders. A ruler may change a tariff without warning. Trade requires imagination. The merchant must picture places he cannot see, and problems that have not yet happened. One man suggests dividing the shipment. If one cart is lost, not everything disappears. Another worries that smaller shipments cost more to guard. The discussion continues. No solution is perfect. Commercial skill often means choosing the danger that can be survived. A servant enters, carrying wine mixed with water. Small cups are placed upon the table. The merchants pause. Drink. Return to the map. Money may move through numbers, but decisions still require time. You leave the banking house and return to the street. Outside, ordinary customers gather near money changers. Foreign visitors need local coins. Pilgrims carry money from distant regions. Soldiers may be paid in currency unfamiliar to shopkeepers. The money changer sits behind a narrow table protected by a cloth canopy. Coins from many cities rest inside small compartments. He recognizes them by image, weight, and sound. A traveler presents several silver pieces. The changer examines one between his fingers. He drops it lightly upon stone. The ring of metal is clear. Counterfeit coins sometimes reveal themselves through sound. The exchange rate is stated. The traveler hesitates. He believes the offer is too low. The changer shrugs. Another table stands farther down the street. Competition exists. The traveler gathers his coins, takes 3 steps, then returns. The rate is accepted. Both men expected this. A little farther along, a notary's office stands open. Contracts are being prepared. Inside, shelves hold bundles of documents tied with string. Property sales, marriage agreements, apprenticeship contracts, partnerships, loans, wills, disputes settled through written promises. A notary occupies an important position between law and daily life. His handwriting can give a private agreement public force. A master craftsman sits before him with a boy and the boy's father. They are arranging an apprenticeship. The boy will live and work inside the master's household for several years. The master agrees to teach the trade, provide food, clothing, basic care. The father may provide a payment. The boy promises obedience. The contract attempts to describe the future, but no page can control every day. Will the master be patient? Will the apprentice learn quickly? Will illness interrupt the training? Will the household treat him fairly? Written words create structure. Human behavior determines what that structure becomes. The notary reads the document aloud. The father asks for one sentence to be explained. The master waits. A change is made. The boy says nothing. His future is being arranged around him. Finally, the agreement is sealed. The father places a hand upon the boy's shoulder. The apprentice will leave with the master. Perhaps he feels proud. Perhaps afraid. Probably both. Outside the office, a woman waits with 2 relatives. She carries a marriage contract. Marriage among Florentine families is not only personal. It involves property, dowry, status, inheritance, and alliances. The affection of 2 people may matter. So do money and family strategy. A daughter's dowry can require years of preparation. A household may save gradually. Invest funds. Borrow. Sell property. The written agreement must protect both families. The woman looks toward the notary's door. Her relatives speak quietly. Behind their practical discussion lies an approaching transformation. A new household. A different name. A move across the city. Perhaps a future she has imagined. Perhaps one chosen largely by others. Florence is filled with individual talent, but family remains one of its strongest forces. You continue toward a street of large merchant palaces. Their walls are built from massive stone blocks. The lower sections appear rough and defensive. Upper floors become smoother. Windows are arranged in balanced rows. Heavy doors open into central courtyards. These palaces announce wealth without needing painted signs. They also announce caution. Florence's powerful families remember periods of conflict. Street fighting, exile, confiscation, revenge. A home must display prestige and offer protection. You pass through the open gate of one palace as servants carry supplies inside. The courtyard is surrounded by arches. A stone well stands at the center. Family emblems appear on shields above the columns. The building is both public and private. Clients may wait here for assistance. Business partners arrive. Relatives gather. Artists present designs. Poorer citizens ask powerful households for favors. Influence flows through personal relationships. A wealthy man may help someone obtain a position, settle a dispute, find employment, arrange credit. In return, loyalty is expected. The Republic has official institutions. Florence also operates through networks of obligation. A servant leads you toward a side hall where a merchant is meeting with an artist. Several sketches lie across the table. The merchant intends to commission a painted altarpiece for a family chapel. The work will express devotion. It will also preserve the family's name. The merchant points toward one drawing. He wants his patron saint included. The artist agrees. The merchant asks whether family members can appear as small kneeling figures near the sacred scene. The artist considers the composition. Too many figures may create disorder. The merchant reminds him who is paying. The artist offers a compromise. 2 family members, placed near the edge, smaller than the holy figures. The merchant accepts. They discuss materials, the quality of gold leaf, the use of expensive blue pigment, the deadline, payment in stages. The contract will define each detail. Artistic freedom exists, but patronage gives it boundaries. The merchant wants beauty. The artist wants recognition. The chapel wants devotion. The family wants memory. One painting must satisfy them all. Near the open door, an apprentice holds a portfolio of drawings. He waits without speaking. The artist asks for one sheet. The apprentice finds it quickly. He has organized the collection carefully. His own name may never appear on the finished work. He may prepare surfaces, mix colors, paint architectural details, add minor figures. The master receives the credit. This is common. A Renaissance workshop produces art collectively, even when history later remembers one famous name. The agreement is almost complete. The merchant offers wine. The artist drinks. Another meeting will follow. A notary may prepare the final contract. The sketches are gathered. The commission has moved one step closer to becoming an object that could survive for centuries. You leave the hall and enter the family garden. It is small but carefully designed. Laurel, rosemary, fruit trees, a fountain, terracotta pots holding fragrant plants. The walls protect the garden from the street. Here, the noise of commerce becomes distant. A tutor sits beneath a covered walkway with 2 children. One child reads from a Latin text. The other follows reluctantly. Wealthy families invest in education. Boys may study grammar rhetoric, arithmetic, history, and classical literature. Girls in elite households may also receive instruction, though their opportunities differ. Education prepares sons for business, law, church positions, diplomacy, or public office. It also shapes family identity. A merchant who reads ancient authors can present himself as more than a trader. He becomes a cultivated citizen. The tutor corrects the boy's pronunciation. The sentence is repeated. Again, slower. The younger child watches a lizard crossing the warm stone. The tutor notices. The lesson pauses. He asks the child to describe the animal in Latin. The child looks uncertain, then tries. The tutor smiles. Learning can enter through distraction. Across the garden, a woman supervises servants arranging household linen. She is responsible for much of the palace's internal management. Food stores, clothing, servants, children, visitors, religious obligations, marriage preparations. The work of elite women is often hidden behind palace walls. Yet large households cannot function without their organization. She checks embroidered cloths one by one. Some belong to the family chapel. Others will be used during a formal meal. One piece contains a stain. A servant explains. The woman gives instructions for cleaning it. No anger, no wasted movement. The household continues according to routines as complex as those in a workshop. A messenger enters the courtyard carrying a letter. The wax seal is inspected before it is opened. The message comes from a relative living in Rome. News travels between powerful families constantly. Births, deaths, marriages, appointments, debts, rumors, political changes. A family spread across several cities remains connected through letters. The merchant's wife reads the message. Her expression changes only slightly. Something unexpected. She folds the letter, calls for a trusted servant. A reply must be prepared. Private news may soon influence public decisions. In Florence, family and politics are rarely completely separate. You return to the street. The afternoon sun has moved across the rooftops. The shadows now fall in the opposite direction. Bank clerks close some ledgers for the midday pause. Merchants step outside to breathe fresh air. Servants carry food into palaces. The square behind you remains active. Another announcement is being read. Another petition delivered. Another letter opened. Florence appears solid from a distance. Up close, it is made from negotiations. Between citizens and officials, masters and apprentices, artists and patrons, bankers and borrowers, parents and children, families and rivals. The city's stone walls seem permanent. Its social world is constantly being remade. You follow a descending street toward the Arno. The river appears between the buildings. Sunlight breaks across its surface. On the opposite bank lies the Oltrarno, a district of workshops, churches, gardens, modest homes, and expanding palaces. The Ponte Vecchio carries a steady stream of people across the water. Merchants, craftsmen, nobles, servants, animals, travelers. Everyone narrows into the same passage. You join them. From the center of the bridge, Florence opens around you. Upstream, the river curves beneath additional bridges. Downstream, mills and boats work along the banks. Behind you, the palace tower rises above the city. Ahead, the streets climb toward gardens and quieter neighborhoods. The political square has shown you how Florence governs itself. The banking houses have shown you how the city moves money across the world. The merchant palaces have revealed how wealth becomes influence, education, religion, and art. But power does not explain the whole city. Across the river, another Florence waits. A Florence of potters, gardeners, laundresses, woodcarvers, cooks, monks, children, and families preparing for the evening. You continue across the bridge. The goldsmiths work inside their narrow shops. The river moves beneath your feet, and the afternoon light leads you toward the quieter side of Renaissance Florence. You continue across the Ponte Vecchio, and as the final light fades beyond the River Arno, let the bells of Florence grow quiet in the distance. May the workshops rest, the lamps burn softly, and the ancient city sleep beneath the Tuscan stars. Thank you for joining this peaceful journey through Renaissance Florence. Good night. Sleep peacefully. And until our next journey through history. Beneath your feet, the River Arno moves steadily through Florence. The afternoon light breaks across its surface in long bands of gold. Small boats drift near the banks. Mill wheels turn farther downstream. Laundry hangs from windows above the bridge, moving gently in the warm breeze. The shops on either side remain busy. Goldsmiths sit beside open shutters, polishing rings and clasps beneath the brightest available light. Merchants speak with customers over narrow counters. Apprentices carry charcoal, tools, metal wire, and small locked boxes between workshops. The bridge is crowded, yet the movement rarely stops completely. People adjust, step aside, wait for a mule to pass, continue forward. A wealthy merchant walking toward the political center shares the same narrow path as a laborer carrying wood. A servant carrying flowers passes a priest. A child squeezes between two carts before being called back by his mother. For a few moments, the entire city is gathered above the river. Then you reach the southern bank. The streets of the Oltrarno open before you. The name simply means beyond the Arno. Yet this district feels like more than the opposite side of the water. The civic palace and great cathedral still rise above the northern rooftops. Their towers remain visible. But here, the streets feel more residential, more intimate. Workshops stand beside family homes. Small gardens hide behind walls. Church squares provide shade and space. The sounds of government and banking become distant. In their place come the sounds of neighborhood life. Wood being cut, clay turning beneath a potter's hands, clothing beaten clean beside the river, children calling to one another, a cooking pot simmering above charcoal. The city has not become silent. It has simply changed its voice. You follow a narrow road, climbing gently away from the bridge. The buildings are less imposing than the merchant palaces you recently passed. Most are made from brick, stone, plaster, and timber. Some are only 2 or 3 stories tall. Wooden shutters remain open to admit air. Small cages hang beside windows. Terracotta pots hold rosemary, sage, basil, and flowering plants. The upper floors project slightly over the street. In several places, the buildings stand close enough for neighbors to speak across the road without raising their voices. A woman leans from one window, holding a basket attached to a rope. She lowers it toward the street. A boy waiting below places a loaf of bread inside. The woman pulls the basket upward. A coin descends moments later. The boy catches it. The entire purchase is completed without anyone using the stairs. Florence has many ways of saving time. Farther along, a craftsman repairs a wooden shutter outside a home. The metal hinge has loosened from the wall. He removes it, examines the damaged wood, then begins fitting a new section into place. The family watches from the doorway. A young child holds several nails inside both hands. The carpenter reaches toward him. The child offers the wrong size. The carpenter smiles and points toward a longer one. The child searches carefully. This time, the correct nail is chosen. The carpenter taps it into place. One strike, then another. A small repair, perhaps completed in less than an hour. Yet tonight, the shutters will close securely against the wind. Ordinary comfort depends upon thousands of small skills. You continue toward a pottery workshop. The open doorway glows with reddish light. A kiln burns inside the rear courtyard. The heat reaches the street. Near the entrance, finished bowls and jars have been arranged upon wooden shelves. Most are simple: cooking pots, water jugs, storage vessels, oil lamps, small dishes, objects intended to be touched every day. A potter sits at a wheel inside the workshop. His foot pushes the lower stone in a steady rhythm. The upper surface turns. A lump of wet clay rests at its center. His hands move inward. The clay rises, narrows, opens. The shape appears slowly. At first, it could become almost anything. Then the walls become thinner. The neck forms. A small water jug begins to emerge. The potter keeps his hands wet. Too much pressure, and the vessel will collapse. Too little, and the walls remain heavy. The wheel turns. The clay responds. The potter's attention remains complete. A customer enters and examines several bowls. She lifts one, runs a finger along the rim, places it back. Another bowl has a small imperfection in the glaze. She asks for a lower price. The potter looks. The flaw does not affect its use. Still, he agrees. The bowl will carry soup just as well as a perfect one. Not every object needs to be beautiful enough for a palace. Most only need to survive the kitchen. At a table near the wall, an apprentice paints simple lines around a group of dried cups. The decoration is modest. Brown pigment against pale clay. One line, then another. He turns each cup carefully. The first two patterns are uneven. The third is better. His master does not interrupt. The apprentice can already see the difference. Learning often happens through comparison. The cups will be fired again. The heat will harden the color into the surface. Some may remain in Florence. Others may be carried to villages beyond the walls. One could survive for decades. Another might break tomorrow. The potter creates without knowing the future of any vessel. A worker carries several finished jars toward the kiln. Each one must be placed with care. The kiln's interior is already hot. The firing process can transform soft clay into a durable object. It can also destroy weeks of labor. Heat that rises too quickly may crack the vessels. Uneven temperature may damage the glaze. A hidden weakness can split a jar apart. The potter understands fire, but never controls it completely. He listens to the kiln, studies the smoke, watches the color of the interior. Experience guides him where instruments cannot. You leave the pottery behind and enter a lane filled with the scent of fresh-cut wood. Several workshops belong to carpenters, chest makers, frame builders, and woodcarvers. Long boards rest against the walls. Oak, chestnut, poplar, walnut. Different woods serve different purposes. Some are strong enough for doors and beams. Others are easier to carve. Some accept paint well. Others are prized for their natural grain. Inside the first workshop, a craftsman builds a storage chest for a household preparing for marriage. The chest will hold clothing, linen, personal objects, and perhaps part of a bride's dowry. Its shape is practical, but the front panel will be decorated. The craftsman has drawn a pattern of vines, flowers, and family symbols across the wood. He uses a small chisel to remove the background around each shape. The design rises gradually from the surface. A chest can remain inside a family for generations. It may travel with a woman into a new household. Later, it could hold the clothing of her children. Its carved surface may be touched by hands not yet born. The craftsman does not speak of this. He simply continues cutting. The blade follows the line. Thin curls of wood fall onto the floor. Nearby, a second worker prepares a frame for a painted panel. The frame is not considered separate from the artwork. Its size, shape, and decoration must support the image. The carpenter measures the panel, marks the wood, checks the measurement again. A small error will become obvious when the pieces are joined. He cuts carefully. The sound of the saw repeats across the room. Forward, back, forward, back. An apprentice collects the sawdust. It may be used to help start a fire or absorb spilled material. Very little is wasted. At the rear of the workshop, a woodcarver shapes a small religious figure. The face is still rough. The folds of the robe are only beginning to appear. The final statue may be painted so completely that little of the wood remains visible. Yet every painted surface depends upon the carving beneath it. The carver studies the direction of the grain. A chisel used carelessly against it may tear away more than intended. Wood appears soft beside marble, but it demands its own form of respect. He turns the figure, cuts near the shoulder, stops, runs his thumb across the surface, then changes tools. The right tool removes only what the hand intends. You continue toward a leatherworker's shop. Animal hides hang beneath a covered yard. Some are pale. Others have darkened through treatment. Leather is used throughout the city. Shoes, belts, bags, gloves, harnesses, book covers, protective clothing, straps holding tools together. The smell of the work is strong. Water, bark, oil, smoke, tanned hide. The unpleasant parts of production often take place farther from the wealthiest streets. Cities prefer finished goods, but every finished object has a beginning. Inside the workshop, a shoemaker sits beside a low table. A wooden form shaped like a foot rests between his knees. He stretches damp leather across it, pulls, secures, adjusts. The shoe must fit closely enough to remain comfortable, but not so tightly that it causes pain. Measurements are simple. The customer's foot may have been traced onto paper or compared directly with the wooden form. Standard sizes are less important than individual experience. A woman waits nearby with an old pair of shoes. The soles are worn thin. The upper leather remains useful. The shoemaker examines them. A repair will cost less than replacement. He removes the damaged sole and selects a stronger piece of leather. The woman watches. These shoes may have been repaired before. Good materials continue serving until they cannot. The shoemaker pierces holes using an awl. Thread passes through. The new sole is attached one stitch at a time. Across the room, an apprentice cuts narrow straps for belts. He follows a straight wooden guide. The first cut remains even. The second begins to drift. His master notices. The apprentice starts again from a different edge. A crooked strip may still be useful for something smaller. Nothing is discarded immediately. The workshop scraps become ties, patches, or small protective pieces. A city that produces luxury goods also understands the value of fragments. You step back into the sunlight. The road descends toward the riverbank. The sound of water grows louder. Here, several women wash clothing and household linen near stone steps leading into the Arno. Some work for their own families. Others are paid to wash for wealthier households. Large bundles rest beside them. Shirts, aprons, bed linen, tablecloths, work garments stained with dye, flour, smoke, oil, and dust. The women soak the fabric, rub it with cleansing mixtures, strike it against smooth stones, rinse it in flowing water. The movement is tiring. Their hands remain wet for hours. Even during warm weather, the river can feel cold. One woman lifts a sheet from the water. It becomes heavy. Another helps her twist out the excess. They work together. The cloth is spread across a clean surface or hung upon lines to dry. The breeze moving along the river carries moisture away. Conversation helps the hours pass. News travels quickly among people who work side by side. A neighbor is expecting a child. A baker has raised prices. Someone's apprentice disappeared for 2 days and returned with an unlikely story. A merchant family is preparing a wedding. A fever has entered one street but not another. Most of what they discuss will never be written. Yet this information shapes how the neighborhood responds. Who receives help? Which house is avoided? Where work may be found? Whose child requires watching? Community knowledge moves through conversation. A younger laundress struggles with a large piece of heavy fabric. The current pulls against it. An older woman reaches over, shows her how to fold the cloth before lowering it. The task becomes easier. No formal lesson, no payment, only experience shared because everyone benefits when the work is completed safely. Near the steps, several children play with pieces of wood floating on the water. They imagine boats traveling toward distant cities. One vessel is no more than a broken plank with a cloth sail. Another carries a tiny clay figure. The children argue over which ship will reach the next stone first. A small current decides. The simplest river game reflects the world surrounding them. Florence is connected to distant places through trade. Children who have never left the city already understand that rivers carry things away. A woman calls one of them back from the edge. He ignores her. She calls again. This time he obeys. The wooden boat continues without him. You follow the river road until the buildings begin climbing toward the church of Santo Spirito. Its broad facade faces an open square. The design is calm, balanced, less crowded with decoration than many older churches. The church belongs to an Augustinian community. Inside, clear proportions and repeating columns create a sense of order. For the people living nearby, the church is not only architecture. It marks time, offers worship, holds funerals, receives gifts, feeds the poor during hardship, provides a place for meetings, teaching, and neighborhood identity. The square before it is active. Vendors sell vegetables, bread, cheese, and simple household goods. A man repairs baskets beneath a cloth awning. Several workers rest in the shade. A group of boys rolls a hoop along the paving stones. The church doors remain open. You enter. The brightness outside gives way to cool, pale light. Columns extend along the nave in measured rows. The floor is worn by generations of footsteps. Candles burn before small chapels belonging to families and guilds. Paintings and sculptures decorate the walls. Some were commissioned to express devotion, some to preserve a family name, some for both reasons at once. A woman kneels near one chapel. Her basket rests beside her. She has probably stopped between errands. Her prayer is quiet. Jord. She stands after only a few moments and returns to the square. Faith often fits between ordinary tasks. A friar moves through the church, checking the lamps. He notices one flame beginning to weaken. He adds oil, straightens the wick. The light steadies. Near the side entrance, another friar speaks with an elderly man who has come seeking assistance. The man's clothing is worn. His shoes have been repaired several times. He explains something in a low voice. Perhaps he needs food. Perhaps shelter. Perhaps help arranging work. The friar listens. No large miracle occurs. He directs the man toward a building beside the monastery. A kitchen serves simple meals at certain times. Charity is limited. Resources are never enough for every need. Still, a bowl of food today matters. You walk through a side passage into the monastic courtyard. The city noise becomes softer. A well stands at the center. Herbs grow in narrow beds beneath the walls. Rosemary, sage, fennel, mint, rue. Plants used for food, medicine, fragrance, and household care. A friar works beside the garden, carrying a small knife. He cuts away damaged leaves. Another collects herbs inside a basket. The monastery's kitchen and infirmary depend partly upon this garden. Knowledge of plants is practical. Which leaf helps calm the stomach? Which root may reduce pain? Which herb flavors a thin soup enough to make it more comforting? Not every remedy is effective, but observation continues. A sick person receives rest, water, warmth, food, prayer, and whatever treatment experience suggests. The monastery's infirmary contains several narrow beds. One is occupied by an apprentice injured at a workshop. His hand is wrapped in linen. A falling tool cut deeply into the palm. The wound has been cleaned. The bleeding has stopped. A caregiver replaces the bandage. The young man looks worried. A craftsman depends upon his hands. If movement does not return properly, his future may change. The caregiver asks him to move his fingers. Slowly, one finger, then another. Pain crosses his face, but the fingers move. The caregiver nods, a small sign of hope. Healing cannot be hurried. The apprentice will remain for several days. His master has sent bread and a message. The place in the workshop will be held. Perhaps the promise is generous, perhaps practical. A trained apprentice is an investment too valuable to lose easily. Either way, the young man relaxes slightly. Across the courtyard, a kitchen prepares food. A large pot hangs above the fire. Beans, cabbage, onions, herbs, and pieces of old bread cooked together. The meal is inexpensive. Thick, warm. A cook stirs with a long wooden spoon. Another worker cuts bread into bowls. The bread is firm enough to hold the soup without immediately falling apart. Several poor residents of the district wait beneath a covered walkway. A widow with 2 children. An elderly laborer. A traveler whose shoes are coated with dust. A woman holding a baby. No one receives much, but each receives something. The line moves quietly. The cook recognizes several people. He asks one woman whether her older son found work. Not yet. A mason may need help tomorrow. The cook gives her a name. Information becomes another form of charity. You leave the monastery and return to the square. The afternoon has begun to soften. Workers are still active, but the day's urgency is changing. Some businesses will remain open until sunset. Others begin preparing to close. A tavern near the corner has filled with craftsmen taking a brief rest. Its doorway is wide. The room inside is dark compared with the square. Wooden tables stand beneath blackened beams. A fire burns in the kitchen. The smell of onions, herbs, roasted meat, and wine fills the air. You enter. Several workers sit together sharing a jug of watered wine. Their clothing reveals different trades. One sleeve is stained with pigment. Another man's hands carry traces of charcoal. A third wears an apron marked by wood dust. They speak about the day. A customer who refused to pay. A tool that broke. An apprentice who works too slowly. A patron who changed his mind after the work was nearly complete. Complaints become stories. Stories become jokes. The men laugh. At another table, 2 merchants discuss the price of oil. Their voices remain lower. A servant carries bowls from the kitchen. The meal contains beans, vegetables, and a little salted meat. Bread rests beneath the broth. Simple food appears again and again in Florentine homes and taverns. Ingredients change with season, wealth, availability, and habit. Ordinary meals are built from what can be stretched. A little oil. A handful of beans. Vegetables. Herbs. Bread too old to eat alone. Nothing spectacular. Enough to continue working. Near the wall, a traveler sits alone. His cloak is dusty. A pack rests beneath the bench. He listens to the conversations without joining them. Perhaps he has arrived from Siena, Bologna, Rome, or a village only a day away. Florence can be overwhelming to outsiders. The bells, the crowd, the enormous dome, the wealth displayed in church chapels, the noise of workshops, the confidence of merchants. The traveler eats slowly. A tavern worker asks where he is going. He names a street. The worker explains the route. Cross 1 square. Pass the church. Turn after the well. The traveler repeats the directions. Florence is easier to understand through landmarks than street names. You leave the tavern and continue toward one of the district's larger residences. The Pitti Palace rises ahead. Its stone facade is broad and severe. Large rounded blocks give the lower level a powerful appearance. The building was begun for a wealthy Florentine family. Its scale expresses ambition. Yet compared with the later generations that may transform it, the palace in the year 1500 remains part of a developing district rather than the center of a royal court. Carts deliver supplies through a side entrance. Servants move between storage rooms and kitchens. A stable worker leads a horse toward the courtyard. The palace seems grand from the street. Inside, it is another complicated household. Floors must be swept, water carried, food purchased, textiles cleaned, accounts maintained, roofs inspected, animals cared for. Wealth increases comfort, but also creates more things that require attention. A steward stands beside several workers unloading firewood. He checks the amount against a written record. The supplier insists the cart contains the full quantity. The steward disagrees. They count the bundles. One has been hidden beneath another at an angle that makes the load appear larger. The supplier smiles awkwardly. The missing amount will be delivered tomorrow. Even a palace must protect itself from small dishonesty. The steward marks the account. Nothing dramatic, only another detail within the management of a wealthy home. You do not remain long. Beyond the palace, the streets become quieter. Walls conceal orchards, vineyards, kitchen gardens, and patches of open land. Florence is dense, but not every space is filled with stone. Within and beyond the walls, gardens provide vegetables, fruit, herbs, shade, and private recreation. You follow a path beside a high wall. Branches extend above it. Fig leaves, pomegranate flowers, the upper sections of pear trees. A wooden gate stands partly open. Inside, a gardener pushes a barrow filled with soil. He allows you to pass. The garden belongs to a prosperous household. It is practical rather than purely decorative. Rows of vegetables grow beside fruit trees. Grapevines climb wooden supports. Beans twist upward around poles. Herbs occupy smaller beds near the kitchen door. A narrow channel carries water through the property. The gardener opens a small barrier. Water changes direction. It enters one row. The soil darkens. After several minutes, he closes the barrier and redirects the flow. Water must be shared carefully. Too much in one area leaves another dry. The gardener understands the slope of the land better than any drawing. He knows where moisture gathers, which tree needs less, which bed dries first beneath the afternoon sun. A boy follows him carrying a hoe. He is learning the work. The gardener points toward a patch of weeds growing between onions. The boy begins removing them. He pulls quickly, too quickly. One onion plant comes out with the weed. The gardener notices. He kneels, shows the difference between the leaves. The boy studies them, begins again more carefully. The mistake is small. The lesson may last for years. At the far side of the garden, several women gather herbs for the evening meal. One cuts sage. Another collects parsley. A servant carries a basket of lettuce toward the kitchen. A cook has requested more onions. The household depends upon this land in ways the guests dining inside may never consider. A banquet begins with someone kneeling in soil. You walk beneath a trellis covered with vines. Clusters of grapes hang above. They are not yet ready for harvest. Sunlight passes through the leaves, creating shifting patterns across the path. A fountain stands at the center of a small ornamental area. Rose bushes surround it. A stone bench rests in the shade. The wealthy family may walk here during the evening. Children may study beneath the trees. Visitors may be received where the air is cooler than inside the palace. Gardens offer privacy. In